Salutations my Fallout lovers, it is Matty here today bringing you a Fallout 4 discussion video. Now before anything, be sure to check out the link in the description of my previous video. That is why Fallout 4 is shaping up to be a truly special game. Anyways, Pete Hines did an interview with Metro at Gamescom, and it is a fantastic one. It's a super long interview talking about Fallout 4, Bethesda as a whole, and Bethesda's future, and we get a lot of interesting stuff. But most importantly was the response to Fallout 4's criticism that I'd like to highlight in today's video. So it's going to be a long one, there's going to be a lot of quote reading and responding, so let's go ahead and dive straight into this. Starting off with the first question, in terms of the reception to the game so far, I was looking again online and I was surprised at how negative a lot of it is. There seems to be a significant proportion of the fans upset at the quality of the graphics, and there also seems to be a Diablo 3 style reaction to the use of color, which was personally my favorite part of the reveal. Do these sort of complaints surprise or upset you? Pete Hines responds with, "It definitely doesn't upset us. Very little surprises me after 16 years in this industry. Generally speaking, I think we're an industry, we're a form of entertainment. As with most forms of entertainment, you never get 100% agreement on anything. And so, at the end of the day, whether it's what the graphics look like, or whether the gameplay is what you want, or whether you like the setting, or whatever it is, everybody is entitled to their opinion." And well said, Pete. So what Bethesda is essentially doing here is using their experience to their advantage. They know they can't please everyone, they just simply can't. And they also realize that this is the internet, which is a whole other realm. Now things start off a bit slow with this interview, and we gradually go deeper and deeper to the philosophy of Bethesda and how they're dealing with this criticism and how they're actually responding to the fans. So let's continue onwards. Metro says in response, "I'll say it surprised me. I knew how excited people were and are, and I figured most of your fans know that a complex open world game like this is going to have some compromises in terms of the visuals. But they're also complaining that the gameplay is too similar to Fallout 3, that you haven't shown much that couldn't have been done in the previous games. Is that something you would accept?" Pete Hines says, "I mean, certainly it ought to look and feel familiar. If you played Fallout 3, you ought to be able to see things that are recognizable or similar or whatever, because we didn't make a completely different game. But at the same time, when you're playing, it's a mix of familiar and different. There are things that are the same and there are things that are very different. But those are things that are sometimes very difficult to demonstrate in a short video at an E3 showcase or whatever. But if you jump into the game and you play for an extended period of time, you start to feel the differences and how much some things have changed." Before I focus on Pete Hines' statement, which was very interesting, I'd like to focus on a specific quote from Metro. They said, "I figured most of your fans know that a complex open world like this is going to have a compromise in the terms of visuals." Now sadly, this is because it's a result of Bethesda Game Studios becoming a very popular developer that makes basically the next mainstream game, and not in the bad way. Mainstream in the sense where everyone's playing it. It's the game that creators are basing their channels off of now and when the game launches. And this results in a lack of knowledge in the developer's pedigree, considering, for example, Skyrim sold over 20 million copies, and that was a ton of people's first Bethesda Game Studios game and their first Elder Scrolls game. So not everyone's going to be as invested in everything Bethesda did beforehand, and it also comes hand in hand with the next-gen technology upgrade. Everyone thinks next-gen means bigger, better, beautiful, but all it does is allow more creative freedom for certain things that we weren't able to achieve in the sense of size, people on screen, that type of stuff. And people put too much emphasis on that and expect that games should look like the Order 1886, but play in a big world like Bethesda Game Studios, when that's just sadly not the case and won't be for a very long time. Now let's shift over to Pete Hines' statement, where he basically admits that Fallout 4 isn't a drastic change from Fallout 3 in a sense. By this, he is likely referring to mechanics such as hacking, lockpicking, the similar family vibe between Fallout 3 and 4, etc. Ladies and gentlemen, what we need to remember is that Fallout 4 is a sequel to Fallout 3. And what does a sequel usually do? It takes what made that first game special and it builds upon it. There will be similarities, but there will be different things, as we've seen with the crafting system, the settlement system, etc. Pete is also basically saying that in order to grasp the differences between Fallout 3 and 4, you have to play Fallout 4. It's not something you can show. An example I thought of was the shooting mechanics. We're so accustomed to Fallout 3 and New Vegas's crappy shooting mechanics that when we see Fallout 4, we're like, oh cool, they updated the shooting. But you probably won't feel that difference of, wow, this makes a huge difference until we actually have the game in our hands. And here's where the killer stuff comes in when Metro asks, "Do you guys have a big meeting at the end of the day and say, well, the fans don't like the graphics?" Pete Hines says in response, no, we do not. We tend to try and focus the vast majority of our feedback on people who have played and experienced something. So fan feedback on Skyrim or Fallout 3 or Wolfenstein or Dishonored in particular is incredibly useful in figuring out what did people like, what didn't they like, what did they struggle with, what were the things they wish were different or better or not in the game or whatever, to figure out what you're going to do in the next one. So when you're shipping a game, we talked about the brevity between announcement and launch. That's also an indicator of how far along in the process we are for making decisions and putting content into the game. You don't really decide to pivot in June and do an entirely different thing and still be out this November. So I think the team from a development standpoint is focused on a thing that they believe in and finishing what they think they have to do. And from our standpoint, we're going to continue to talk about what we're doing. And if your default position is X is terrible and I'm not going to buy the game, I have sometimes been criticized for this attitude, but my basic philosophy is, okay, you can use whatever criteria you want to buy or not buy a game, because ultimately it's not up to me. I don't get to go up to each individual consumer and say, you have to buy this game or I'm going to try to convince you otherwise. I put out information in the best way possible to give people a good idea. Here's what we're doing and here's what it's going to be like. And you might decide I hate post-apocalyptic, or I don't like the color blue, or I don't think your graphics look good, or I think your combat is dumb. Whatever your reasons are for not buying it, it's like Yogi Berra said. If people aren't going to come to the game, nobody is going to stop them. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with that. I still have a job to do, and I have a lot of people who are interested, who still want to know more and give it a chance. So I'm going to talk to those people. Like, I assume 100% of the industry is not going to buy this game, and there are a vast number of reasons why they may not. Ah, yes, all the reading is finally out of the way. Time to give my thoughts on the remainder of the quotes. There was a lot to absorb there, so I'm going to kind of break it down a little bit. I want to focus on how Bethesda takes feedback first. They take feedback from people who actually play their games. Simple enough, right? But I want to kind of give a hypothetical example. They'll get feedback on Fallout 3 shooting, how it really isn't that good, then maybe read some reviews, some forum posts, some fan thoughts on how the gunplay in Wolfenstein and New Order, for example, was so damn good, in order to figure out what elements should be implemented into Fallout 4. So it's like, oh, I like the recoil and how realistic and powerful and meaty the guns in Wolfenstein feel. I wish that was in Fallout 4. Okay, let's try to add that to Fallout 4. I also really love how Bethesda's sticking to their vision, as we can tell, because this is thanks to a short time between the reveal and launch of this game. It is in fact a double-edged sword though, for some. Keyword some. Yes, we get to see the game and not have to wait a long time to play it, but it also doesn't give much time for some of our feedback to trickle in and maybe make a change or two to the game that a lot of fans weren't pleased with. I'm personally one of the people who's perfectly fine with this vision, because I hate to say it, but when you look at a game such as Destiny, which was supposed to be so much more, but didn't meet expectations thanks to a late shift in the development cycle, it's good that Bethesda is reigning strong and doing what they feel is right. Whether or not that pans out properly, we'll see in the future. I also just love the attitude and real talk from Pete in these quotes, and I just wanted to point them out specifically and talk upon them a little bit. Like, if nobody's going to come to the game, nobody's going to stop them. I'm not going to convince you otherwise. I put out information to give people a good idea. Here's what we're doing, and here's what it'll be. And I still have a job to do, and I have a lot of people who are interested who still want to know more and give it a chance. So I'm just going to talk to those people. This is a very good way to take criticism into account and kind of run a lot of people, because it's tough being a public figure and handling everyone's feedback, because you can't sit down and confront every single person out there and be like, okay, I'm going to try to fix your problem and your problem and your problem. It's just impossible. So Pete is kind of acknowledging in a sense that Bethesda fans tend to blur that passion with anger. They just want to see more, to understand more. You know, they want to uncover all those secrets that Fallout 4 has, and when they can't, it just leads to anger about the games, because then those just point out things that can be criticized so easily, such as the graphics, which most of us agree are fine, but some feel like it's easy to pick on, so they'll just do that just to hate on the game because they can't learn more. And I can personally relate to this. People love Fallout so much, and they just want more, and when there isn't more, at least until the game is out, they get mad at me because I'm not like digging up some type of mystical news. So when the news mill is dry, people get legitimately upset with me for not covering anything, and they get worried. They're like, is Matty running out of video ideas? And it's like, well, no, don't get upset, but there's nothing to talk about. So we're just going to do what business as usual and talk about Fallout, and I'm just going to try to appease to the majority of my audience who is here for me and Fallout. So I love how like Pete has taught me, in a sense, from his veteran leadership over at Bethesda. He's taught me a lot on how to deal with a lot of the audience from Bethesda, and it's really interesting. He's really a smart guy, and I'm not just trying to D-ride here, to be honest. I don't mean to go off the professional train, but that's just the best way to put it, honestly. But you know, he had some really great quotes in this article here, and I just want to highlight a lot of them and just talk upon it, because Bethesda has finally responded in full to all the criticism Fallout 4 has received, and well, it seems like most people are just kind of wasting their breath because they have a vision, they're sticking to it, and they're not going to change their minds whatsoever, and they're focusing on the positivity, and they should, and that's a good way of doing things. So I'm proud of you, Bethesda. You're doing good, and I can't wait for your game, obviously. Anyways, let me know what you're thinking about this on Sugar Bombed as well as on Twitter. Other than that, be sure to follow me on Twitter, like me on Facebook. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.